Hi, this is John from Elusive Productions. I'm coming to you now for video number 5 in our series of 7 of lessons that we learned during the rites of Eleusis. And this one is on things that you can't see. If you haven't seen the other 4 videos, you should check them out. They're fun. And if you have, you'll notice that this particular recording is better because I figured out more with lighting and microphone placement and camera placement. And so, much like we learn as we went along, this one's going to be significantly better than last time. You're welcome. So one of the things that we learned during the rites of Eleusis is that we didn't necessarily have the budget to do all of the cool things that we wanted to do on stage. And so we found a way to sort of make things happen off stage that we alluded to that then allowed the audience to fill in the blanks, to draw their own connections. And this was really helpful for us in terms of both basically allowing us to create a part of the story or a part of the narrative that wasn't necessarily there initially, and to basically not stage scenes, but rather show the aftermath of a scene or that sort of thing without actually having to spell it all out on the stage. It let that imagination fill in those blanks, and that is a super useful technique in theater in general. And so we use this to our best advantage. And there's a few specific times we used it that I'm going to sort of call out. The first one I want to talk about is actually called out in Crowley's script, which is the crucifixion of Soul. Now, if you have watched The Rite of Soul, you realize that it all happens behind a veil. In our case, it happens within a closed ziggurat. You can't see what's happening in there, but there's this sort of the sort of plaintive soliloquy type speech that Leo gives about the folly of man and hubris and disaster that follows it. And so the net result is the ziggurat closes, and then there's this sort of soliloquy, and then enter Bez with the paten where the body of the slain god will eventually be rested. And then they open the ziggurat, and Soul has been crucified. And this is surprise to the audience. Hey, something happened inside there that we didn't necessarily know was going to happen unless we read ahead, at which point we totally knew. But you get the point that the filling in of the blanks there was, again, in Crowley's original script. Now, we use the same concept a couple of times. Again, Crowley calls it out when much of Libra's exhortation against Venus comes from offstage. You don't see Libra delivering those lines, but rather you hear them from offstage, and it's just some sort of a long, angry rant from a hidden position. Incidentally, did those vocals live every night into a microphone because we didn't want to just pre-record it. That was much cooler to have a live presentation of that. But yeah, a really interesting way to use what is not seen to influence the audience. Saturn's intermission, again, something we used where we had created this sort of idea of Capricornus creating this poppy juice potion, this magical elixir, and then to show that formula was lost, we also had then Brother Aquarius come out and try to make the mixture at an alchemy station during the intermission and just make a mess everywhere. The sort of cannibalistic nature toward God and Jupiter is captured really nicely in our intermission scene there, with the clowns and the strong man and the platter of hands. And the platter of hands was actually a joke. It was, he actually got to sit on stage, Kellen, our strong man, and eat barbecue every night during the performance. We actually sent out for this barbecue. And then on the platter, there were also like hands and various organs that the other clowns then get squicked by. So if you watch the intermission there, that's kind of what's going on. And they hold up bottles of fava beans and a nice Chianti, in case you didn't catch that. It's just a fine throwaway joke. But it was, again, this idea that we were going to not necessarily show everything. We do that sort of sporagmos scene at the end of Act 1 of Jupiter in low light, and there's just blood everywhere, and it's really kind of hard to tell what's going on, but the intermission is meant to drive that home. It's also worth noting that all of these are one-act plays as written, and we started inserting intermissions. And again, the idea came with what we don't do on stage. Now, in the Rite of Mercury, we had a combat scene on stage, and we had to carefully choreograph it. In the Rite of Luna, we had some combat on stage, and we had to carefully choreograph it. And when it came to the Rite of Mars, we'd already done all this complex choreography around the rituals and around the moving of the fence panels and the sort of integrating of the armies at the beginning that we did during the 963. And so when it came to the battle scene, well, we wanted to have the aftermath of the battle, and we wanted the people marching off to battle. And so we literally inserted the intermission there at that point to have everyone march off stage. Everybody goes out to the lobby and has a drink for half an hour, comes back in, and we just carry the bodies back in. And it sort of turns from this proto-military, everything is awesome, to an episode of MASH, where you've got people trying to care for the bleeding and the dying. You don't actually see the combat, you just see the aftermath. And it's interesting because that's how, in the Middle Ages, war was. If no messenger showed up from the city, everybody marched off to battle, and you didn't find out, until a year later or more, what was the outcome of that battle anyway? Nobody ever came back, or they all came back, 6 months later, and they were missing limbs. This is a thing that, you didn't know, and the unknown creates that sense of tension. And it also then gives us a context for Capricornus breakdown in the Rite of Mars. And that's the scene that we're going to look at right now. So there's the scene with everyone marches off to battle, goes to an intermission, comes back. We've got that sort of just disturbing music and the loss of life and again, it was really well acted. God, the cast and crew did such a great job with that. It was super impressive. And don't want to toot our own horn, but I think they did a great job. There was one other instance where we, again, what you don't see, or in this case, the misdirection. When we went back to when we originally did Luna, one of the things that we were really concerned about were there were all these invocations that were toward the seated Artemis, and the Artemis was initially designed to be sitting at the back of the theater, which meant everyone was invoking with their back to the audience, or the very best with, at the sides of the stage pointing inward. And we thought, wouldn't it be smart just to reverse that? And we will put Luna at the back of the theater, and then all the invocations will go directly through the audience and into Luna. And the net result of that, and I just love that these things happen, was probably our second or third performance. There was someone in the audience who had chosen this particular instance to engage in a rather heroic dose of hallucinogenic substances and sat right in front of Luna's throne, which means that all the invocations were sort of directed right at this person, and then all of the crazy ranting of Pan as he's completely going crazy directed right at this person. And so immediately at the end of the performance, they got up and they ran out of the theater and they locked themselves in the bathroom in the lobby, and it took us about half an hour to get them out. So cautionary tale. I don't have a problem if you want to play freelance psychedelic astronaut, take heroic amounts of whatever, but please don't do it when I have to pay the staff to stay late. Just go ahead and practice some responsibility there. Be smart, stay safe. And with that, be smart, stay safe. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and look forward to next week. Talk to you later.